Welcome back, folks. I'm Frizz, and today I'd like to take some time to talk about an excellent part of Pathfinder 2e that I don't have immediate hands-on experience with using myself, but that I've felt the impact of time and time again. Making encounters is actually super straightforward in Pathfinder 2e, and the main reason for this is that Pathfinder 2e's encounter builder actually works. Now, obviously, Pathfinder 1st Edition and D&D 5e's encounter design tools exist, and they do also work, but they have a lot of issues, so do they really work? The main issue is that it can be very, very hard to accurately predict how difficult an encounter is going to be before it starts, because while you can look at how much XP a certain enemy is going to give, or their level, or their CR, that doesn't actually, tell you how difficult the encounter is going to be. They, have ways of estimating encounter difficulty, but there's a huge margin of error, and often it relies a lot on personal experience to figure out if an encounter is going to kill, a PC or not, which you don't always want that to be up to your personal experience to determine if you're putting a really, really difficult challenge in front of your players or not. Pathfinder 2e's encounter building rules are different though. They are actually pretty damn precise, and they can give you a nice estimate for how difficult an encounter is going to be just by looking at how much XP that encounter gives. Thanks to many, many different aspects of the system, encounters will generally have around the same level of difficulty if they give the same amount of XP, and that's true no matter the level of the party. An encounter that gives 80 XP will be around as difficult at level 5 and level 15, though obviously those are different encounters for level 5 and level 15. But so long as those give 80 XP appropriate to the level, they should be around the same difficulty. The fact that no matter what level you're at, the XP budget for encounters stays the same is really, really useful for learning how to make encounters, because once you learn it at one point, you're pretty much good elsewhere. Especially because there's only 5 categories of encounter difficulty, or really ranges of encounter difficulty. Trivial encounters are exceptionally easy and are basically just warm-ups with little fear of real consequence, and they normally only give 40 XP. The opposite are extreme encounters, which give a insane 160 XP, but are ridiculously challenging, and it isn't surprising if a severe encounter leads to the death of one or more PCs, even if they're fully rested and ready to go. Generally speaking, trivial and extreme encounters should be the rarest in campaigns, because they're the ones that can most easily feel like a bit of a waste of time, where there's no real consequence for anything that you're doing, or just kind of impossible. You can win extreme encounters. It's just really damn hard. Low, moderate, and severe encounters have a budget of 60, 80, and 120 XP respectively, and as you might expect, those names are pretty telling as to how difficult you can expect those encounters to be. For context, a severe encounter is the final boss of an arc or a dungeon, and having severe encounters back to back to back can be exceptionally challenging, especially if you don't have time to rest between them. Having a good mix of low, moderate, and severe encounters is good, and in my experience that is the healthiest setup for a game, is mostly moderate, then some low and some severe, then very occasionally trivial and extreme encounters. Also, and this is just a huge benefit for GMs, if you learn how to build encounters for a lower level party, the exact same principles apply for high level parties. Yeah, there's going to be more stuff to keep in mind, like double and triple checking what spells monsters have, so you'll know if they have any instant death ones, because that's good to know before you cast it on a player. But the same general rules apply. Giving XP based on the difference between the party's level and the level of whatever they're dealing with is just such a more elegant system than having to give out larger and larger amounts of XP based on the level or CR of the thing that they're fighting. Yeah, it can be super satisfying to take something out and then get 50,000 XP for that one enemy, but it's pretty messy figuring out okay, well then what level will that get us? How much XP do we need to level up? And just having every level up require 1000 XP every time is just clean, and it makes estimating encounter difficulty dramatically easier for GMs, and really, GMs need the help. Sadly though, the encounter creation rules aren't perfect, which, while a little frustrating, isn't at all surprising because, really, no set of rules is ever going to be perfect. There just isn't a perfect system in existence. See, looking at the XP budget for an encounter can tell you about its difficulty, but there are always going to be deviations from that expected difficulty. The most common and obvious is that encounters that consist of one creature are generally going to be more challenging than encounters against a bunch of weaker enemies, even though both fights give the same amount of XP. This might not exactly track with experience in other editions like Pathfinder 1st Edition or D&D 5e, but really lower level enemies are dramatically weaker, and that's way more noticeable in Pathfinder 2e. So yeah, one single strong enemy is going to have less actions in Pathfinder 2e, naturally, there's fewer of them, but they hit so much harder that the difference is very noticeable. Now, this isn't like a hard and fast rule, but most of the near TPKs I've had from modern encounters were against single creatures rather than a horde. Of course, the other situation that throws off expected encounter difficulty is purely based on your personal party composition and the specific enemies that you're fighting, because sometimes monsters will kind of counter certain strategies. For example, if you're in a party that, or you're GMing for a party that relies heavily on precision damage, then an ooze is going to wreck their day because, yeah, oozes are immune to precision damage. So they're almost immune to rogues. It can really make fights a lot more challenging. Like, some parties will deal with poisonous enemies exceptionally well, and others have a very, very high chance of dying to poison. So there isn't a whole lot that I can say outside of that it's important for GMs to be aware of the strengths and weaknesses of their party, and to only occasionally, and hopefully intentionally, exploit those weaknesses. And of course, it's also on the players to be aware of what their weaknesses are so they can take at least some attempts to cover those weaknesses. So yeah, having a working encounter builder is amazing for a wide variety of different reasons, some of which I, of course, didn't mention in this video because I'm a player, not a GM. It just makes things so much easier for GMs who are having to improvise encounters because they didn't expect the party to go to a particular location, and being able to make those encounters quickly without being super worried that they're going to be putting a challenge that the party just can't deal with and someone's going to die. It's also useful for estimating encounter difficulty and just tons of other stuff. Like, really, it's very useful. Even if you aren't using XP in your game, and you're just using milestone leveling, I would still recommend calculating XP and tracking it, because it can also help pace level ups whenever you're using milestone, because you'll know whenever they would have leveled up if they were using normal XP. So you can try and just stop keeping people at a particular level for like 6 months, then realize that they would have leveled up like 4 times. It's just a useful tool for so many different things. And while it's not a perfect system with 0 flaws, it's so much better than the tools that GMs have been provided with in previous editions. Thanks for watching. I haven't talked about the GM side of 2e all that much, since I'm not a GM, but that's a shame, since I kind of feel like 2e is a bigger improvement for GMs than it is for players. Also, I'm sorry if this video is a bit all over the place. I'm kind of in a fugue state, but that's what it is. Anyway, what are any recommendations you have for people who are new to making encounters in 2e? And what's the favorite encounter that you've made or fought in? Or hell, even what times have you had where the XP completely lied about how hard an encounter is? Let me know in a comment down below, and while you're down there, please consider subscribing and joining the channel as a member. While being a member is the best way to support this channel, by a long shot, and I appreciate everyone who does. But regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life.